Well, hello everyone, and welcome back to Adrian's Digital Basement. This is part 6 in the Apple II Plus repair series, so if you haven't watched the previous parts, I recommend you do that first. There'll be links in the description to all of those parts. In this video, we're picking up where I left off in the last video, cleaning up some loose ends there were with the machine, specifically looking at those expansion cards and looking at the floppy drives. So, without further ado, let's get right to it. Next up on the list are the expansion cards. So I left two in here. The disk controller I removed when I took the cover off this machine, but these two cards you haven't seen before. This front one here is a Microsoft Softcard. This is a Z80 processor and allows you to run CPM on your Apple II. If I pop it out, I have it in slot 4. Behind that is an 80 columns card. This is a Videx clone, and I bought this and the CPM card both off eBay for a pretty low amount of money. I can't remember how much I spent for this one, but it did come in the original box. No manual or floppies though. But the 80 columns card was just loose, and it was actually listed as a memory card for some reason on eBay. And I think it was something like $10. Now I haven't tested either of these cards, but before I can even test the Z80 card, I need to see if this 80 columns card is working. Now I think Videx was the first 80 columns card for the Apple II, or one of the first. And unfortunately, because of their early release of that card, it was heavily cloned. And this one doesn't say Videx anywhere on here, but it's an absolute clone. The chip layout is exactly the same, and it's got a ROM chip here, which is clearly just a copy of the Videx one. And I think that's how most 80 columns cards were on the Apple II Plus. They were all pretty much Videx compatible, even ones from reputable brands like Applied Engineering. They have a different layout than this, but the way the card works was the same, which I think was a good thing in a way, because software designed for the Videx card, like say VisiCalc, would work on other cards as well. You didn't have to have all these different video card standards on the way you interface with the card. It was all pretty much similar. Now you may notice there's no RCA connection on here, like there's no way to just take this video cable off the back of the computer and plug it into the card. And it would have been nice if they had integrated that functionality into the card, where it would plug into the motherboard video header, which is this stuff right here, and then allow you to plug the monitor into this card, like say over here, and it would do the switching automatically between 80 columns and 40 columns. What Videx ended up doing is they have the video output right here on this pin header, and they had a little board that sort of plugged in somewhere around here, like onto one of these ICs, and it would detect whether you were running in the graphics mode, or I think 40 or 80 columns, or I don't know, whatever. Like there was a way that that little circuit had a transistor on it, and it would auto switch between the video that was coming off the motherboard here and from the video on the video card. I remember on our Apple II Plus as a kid, we actually had a little external switch box that you had to physically switch between 40 or 80 columns mode. So when you use something with the Videx card, ours was a Videx or a Videx clone, you just had to flip this external switch box to switch you over between the card. And if you left it on 40 columns while you're on 80 column mode, you'd still see whatever you had on the screen before. You just couldn't do anything. And the same goes for switching back from 80 to 40, is when you did that, whatever was on the 80 column screen would just still stay there static, and you just have to flip the switch. And I guess technically it's probably possible on the II Plus to use both 40 and 80 columns simultaneously. Maybe there were debuggers that actually allowed you to do that. And that's because this card itself has its own discrete memory that is separate from the video RAM, which is stored in the regular main RAM on the Apple II Plus. So you could theoretically be in 80 columns mode and still write to video memory here and alter the display of the 40 columns mode while using 80 columns. So what I'd like to do now is just build a cable that goes from this pin header to a standard RCA cable jack. That way I can just even have it hanging out of the back of the computer and either use a switch box or just manually plug a monitor into this. I just want to see if this card is indeed working properly before I go ahead and try and build up any kind of circuits. Just a little bit of investigation later, I found that the top pin is ground and the next one after that is video. I took a, cable from an old PC case, reset switch or something like that, and I attached it to what I had a little offcut of a cable, and I liked this reset switch cable because it was nice and twisted, which means this should connect just like so. So I have the monitor plugged into the motherboard because I got to start and do PR number 3 to get to 80 columns mode. So let me just make sure everything's good to go. Yep, the cable's sitting there. Power this on. There is the computer. Now, I should be able to type PR number 3, and the cursor is gone because theoretically the output is now coming off the 80 columns card. This monitor, as I'd mentioned before, is not going to be great for 80 columns, but we should still get an image of some kind. So let's connect this up, and I don't see anything at all. Well, that's not great. Now, if I type and hit Control G, we're getting a beep. Yep, nothing at all coming out of here. I mean, there's definitely something there. Oh, wait. Wait a second, what's going on here? I saw an image there. Wait a second, did I do bad soldering? Oh, wait a second, I did a bad job with my soldering. Darn it, this is so ridiculous. PR number 3. There it is. Okay, it's off the bottom of the screen, but there's definitely text and it is working. That's something about the Videx VideoTerm card, which is based off of, that is different than the Apple II. It actually, the characters, it supports lowercase and it has descenders. So like the J and the G actually go below the line. And to do that, they made the character cells 1 pixel higher, I think, which makes the 24 line text actually go off the top and bottom of the screen a little bit. So you do have to adjust the vertical size on the back of the monitor to compensate for that. But I am intrigued that my solder job inside this heat shrink was so cruddy because I took extra care to make sure that I did it correctly. Although this RCA cable was already pre-cut and it must have already had a bad connection. So I think I just need to chop it and redo this. All right, try number 2. I have redone this connection here. I just chopped it off and redid it. And I brought the 1084 out because that other monitor, it just wasn't cutting it in 80 column mode as much as I love it. That's a small Panasonic. This one, on the other hand, is much better at doing 80 columns. Power it on. Now it's only plugged into the 80 columns card, so we're not going to see anything. But if I do PR number 3, there it is. Looking good. Now I do notice something. You might have noticed it as well. Notice the beep sound. Listen, Control G. It's that sound. And if I type PR number 0 to go back to the 40 column mode, PR number 0, that didn't work because I had Control G's pushed there. Okay, so the cursor is still flashing, but we're actually outputting text on the other one. If I hit Control G now, different sound. So PR number 3, we're back to here. Does anyone know why that is different? I'm wondering if like the ROM, the text processing ROM is producing the sound and it just uses a slightly different frequency when it does it on the 80 column card versus on the 40 columns of the built-in Apple. I don't know, it's weird, isn't it? So Control Reset does make the card blank out. And yeah, I'm outputting text right now into 40 column mode. We're not seeing it here, but if we type PR number 3, should initialize this again. Oh no, it just, there we go, puts it right back at the bottom. Let's see if I can load some software on here to really test out this card. So I'm going to plug in my FloppyEmu, hooked up to an Apple II disk controller card. This is the later card, the one that's from the Apple IIe's. I prefer to use this card with this FloppyEmu because it's got a D sub connector on the back, so I don't risk plugging this in the wrong way, something like that, which could damage everything. So the monitor is now plugged into the motherboard. All right, I have a Videx VideoTerm disc I found online. Let's load this up, PR number 6. No file system, Apple. It says DOS 3.3, so I guess I need to boot something else first, and then switch to this disc. All right, I have blank disk loaded. Hopefully this boots. Okay, that booted. All right, let's do catalog. Look at this at the top here. Weird, corrupt garbage here, and then a space. I don't know. Weird. I'm not sure what's going on here, but let's just run demo. See what that is. All right, now I may have switched over to be on the 80 column card. So let me pull this out and plug this in. Okay, so here it is. Hopefully this is in focus, and the text is not that great on the 1084 here. I don't know what this cycle time is, so we'll just Do 5. That's funny. It's dialing a phone number, 503-758-0521. It's simulating as if you're calling into a BBS. That's a Portland phone number, or at least an Oregon phone number. Was Videx actually an Oregon company? So look, it does say here, converts your lowercase or your standard 40 column uppercase only Apple II to upper and lowercase. Oh, there's all the characters. All right, so you have like line characters, you have some block characters, kind of like the TRS-80 Model 1, gives you some simulated graphics, kind of chunky graphics, but that is something that the regular Apple II does not have. You have these like special control characters like LF, line feed, in one single box. There is an example of using the line characters to actually, you know, do an invoice or whatever this is doing. This was a boon if you were actually running productivity applications on your Apple II and you wanted to have, you know, actual tables and stuff that were visible, not just using exclamation points and other types of characters. Here is an example of the mid-res graphics. So it's using these chunky characters, which is exactly kind of like Petski's has more than this, but Petski has some of these. But the TRS-80 Model 1 has these exact same characters to allow graphics on its text mode, because the TRS-80 Model 1, Model 3, Model 4 has no actual graphics mode, not without a special board you have to buy. So all the games for those systems use these types of characters to create graphics. Oh, neat. And there's an example of a sine wave being plotted using those medium res graphics. It's also using the line graphics to create the tick marks for the scale. Oh, there's an example of a spreadsheet, like what would be in VisiCalc or whatever, running in 80 columns mode. Oh, it does say VisiCalc for Apple II right here. Welcome to Apple Pascal 1.1. Clearly this is not a real thing. Oh, look, a demo of CPM. In fact, it says Microsoft right here, 56K. So the soft card, this is exactly how it would look. The Videx card was supported by a lot of word processors, including this list here. This is, I guess, a screenshot from Apple Writer 2. AppleWorks needed some patching to work on the Apple II Plus, especially because it didn't support uppercase, lowercase by default. In fact, to use lowercase in 80 columns mode, you have to do a shift mod. Wow, that's interesting. It's just listening. You got to do a shift mod to basically run a wire from your keyboard to, I think, the joystick port, which allows the computer to recognize when you're pushing the shift key or one of the other keys as a shift key to give you lowercase support directly. You might be fooled by the fact that there are shift keys on the keyboard and the computer could read those and word processors could use those. No, actually, the shift key never makes its way to the Apple II Plus. It has no way to know you're pushing shift. So you push like shift and W, it just sees a regular W. The keyboard encoder just does not send that signal. Okay, so remember I thought there was garbage at the top of the disk? It's actually lowercase letters, and that's what you see, that garbage, when you don't have lowercase support. So in 80 columns mode, it actually looks absolutely correct. I saw on the disk the font editor, AppleSoft Basic program, so let's run that, see exactly what that lets us do. So this is cool. It's using the graphics mode on the 40 column mode to have a graphical font editor to allow you to create your own fonts for the 80 column card. So what if I hit load? Let's load katakana and see what we got exactly. Okay, there's the katakana. It takes away from the lowercase that would be there normally, and it gives you some extra katakana, so Japanese. All right, so I, J, K, and M allow you to move around. So I'm going to go on the Y symbol and hit P for pull. And check it out, it loaded the yen symbol in there. And I guess this is a representation of how it looks on screen, I guess. I'm not quite sure. So look at this option here, BC, which maybe is Control B, Burn Prom. So I don't think this card supports soft fonts. You can't just load these into RAM and it will display them. I think they're in ROM chips that are actually installed on the board. So you would need to burn this to a ROM chip or an EEPROM, put it in the card, and then you have access to your newly created font. So theoretically, you could create a font for a game you're making, an 80 column game, and then you can stick that on the Videx card, and there you go. You have your graphical character with little spaceships or whatever you need to do. You can do it with this editor. I see another AppleSoft program here called Circle, so let's just give that one a try. First, let's switch back to 80 columns mode, PR number 3, and we're going to do Run Circle. We'll see what we get. Okay, cute. It's drawing circles in 80 columns medium graphics resolution. Okay, I'm satisfied that this 80 column card that I got for $10 is working great. Next up, I want to try this CPM soft card, see if this thing works. The Apple II Plus I used as a kid at home, we had one of these as well, and I remember playing around with it. So the Microsoft Softcard is here in slot 4. On my FloppyEmu, I have the Microsoft CPM Softcard boot disk. It's plugged into the 40 column port. Let's turn this on, see what we get. Can't find Z80 Softcard. So let me power this off. Pop the Softcard back out. I have it in slot 4, which according to the manual is completely fine. There are 4 dip switches, and the manual does say they are normally all off. And indeed, these are all off. I was just giving the board a visual inspection. Everything looks fine. All the chips are in the right way around and whatnot. But there are some pretty janky looking contacts right here. So I'm just going to give this a little clean, give it a little Deoxit, see if that helps. Cleaning the contacts didn't help. I've tried it in slot 4 and now it's in 5. And watch what happens when I turn the computer on. It's booting up CPM. Watch the LED there. See that came on for a second and then said couldn't find card. These are all pushed on the top, so I assume that means off. It also looks like there's some pen marks on there, like someone has fiddled with those. But just for fun, I'm just going to switch these all to the other position. And let's put this back in the computer and see if that makes a difference. Hey, wait a second, something's different. It's still flashing like it's loading, but no error. In fact, it stopped loading, but it's just sitting here. So let's plug into the 80 columns card. Hey, there it is! Would you look at that? Apple II CPM copyright Microsoft. DIR? Yes! Look at that. M basic, G basic. Let's see, M basic. Microsoft Basic 80. Rev 5.2. Apple II CPM version. Apple II forever. Nice, I love it. Control C broke right out of that. I don't even remember how to exit. Let's see if we type system. And I think that worked. Yeah, back at the A prompt. So on the FloppyEmu, I just switched the disk to WordStar and WS for WordStar. That should load WordStar. Copyright 1981, Micro Pro International, and there it is. There's WordStar. Now the Microsoft Softcard, it's not known for being super fast, but I gotta say, this is not terrible. In fact, I think this runs faster than CPM does on the Commodore 128, for instance. Although on the 128, you have the luxury of having lowercase letters. I'm not sure how to do lowercase letters. Probably I have to do that shift mod to do it, but with this keyboard, it doesn't seem like there's a way. So I gotta say, thumbs up for a working CPM card, the Microsoft Softcard, and a working 80 column card. Awesome. The next thing I want to take a look at are the 2 disk drives that originally came with this computer. I haven't even looked at these yet, and several people have been commenting, asking about these drives. So let's take these over to the bench, take them apart, take a look inside. There's not a whole lot that goes wrong with these particular disk drives, so I'm assuming that both of these are probably going to work absolutely fine. They don't even feel too scratchy. Like when you open and close the door, sometimes the lubricant dries up in the little channel that this lever rides in. Not feeling that on either of these. These are both going to be Shugart mechanisms, which are just very reliable mechanisms. Let's take a look at drive 1. So we'll just flip this over. Oh, the screws are a little bit rusty. So there is that. Kind of obviously shows that these drives were stored in the same place that the computer was. You can kind of check out how horrible and rusty that screw is. I'm going to try to find a different screw to put in there and not reuse this horrible one. Notice here on the top case, there are what looks like vents. Just kidding. There's actually black stickers covering those vents. All right, there's the disk drive. And yeah, just like I thought, this is a Shugart mechanism. Again, you can tell because if you flip the drive around, right here, there's sort of a wheel right here, and that moves the head back and forth. That's indicative of the very early Shugart mechanisms. Now, of course, if you've all read the stories or heard the stories, Steve Wozniak did an amazing thing with this Apple II disk drive where he bought the mechanism without the controller board for a much cheaper price. Actually has missing a couple of the other sensors as well. And that way he could offer the Apple disk drive system at a much cheaper price than the comparable Shugart interface standard, which is what PCs used and other things at the time. So yeah, this is the version of the disk drive that was sold that just had no controller, and Apple made their own controller, which mounted on top of the drive here, and the rest is history. I'm going to remove the controller board here, which will give me access to the read-write heads, so I can give it a good clean, and I can also lubricate those rails, because the heads move back and forth on rails. There's some spider debris and whatever in here as well. I will remove that while I have this board off. This is the wheel I was talking about. See, when I move this, it actually moves the heads back and forth. That's the way these sugar art mechanisms work. Because of that, it's not a stepper motor. It's pretty reliable. I mean, it's a bit weird sounding when it operates, but again, very reliable. Really, there's not much for me to do. I have some silicone here, lubricant. I'm going to put a little bit of this on a cotton swab, just get this wet. And I'll put some on these rails here. And I'm gonna bust out one of the chamois tips for cleaning the head, sent in on a mail call. They're little flat plastic sticks with chamois material stuck on the end, perfect for getting in underneath the pad there for cleaning the head. So I'll just add in a little bit of IPA here, a little 99%, just a little bit. And I'll slide this under here and just rub this on the head, get that nice and clean. It actually looked completely clean, so I think it didn't really need cleaning anyways. And the only other thing I like to do is put a little bit of silicone grease in these two channels here, which just helps the little head flapper thingy go up and down. I don't know, whatever that's called. So I take a little bit of silicone grease and I put this on a cotton swab as well. And then I just put that inside the channel here. Do it on both sides. And when you do this back and forth a few times, it'll become super easy to open and close. Let's put this board back in place. Don't forget to plug the head back in. You're not going to get much operation if you don't do that. And at this point, I just need to do a little bit of cleaning on the faceplate, which for me means a little Windex, microfiber cloth. Just apply the Windex to the cloth, close the lid, just give it a good wipe down. And the final step is 303 protectant on this faceplate, just to give it a little bit more of a nice black color sheen. This entire bottom section here where the Apple logo is in disc 2, this is a sticker on top of the original black disk drive. So I shouldn't really have applied the 303 to that. It's not going to hurt it, but obviously it's a painted metal sticker plate thing. 303 really only works on plastic. I'm just going to do exactly the same thing to this drive number 2. So here's something kind of interesting. The second drive, it's got this weird brown coating over everything on the inside, but it's really hard to get off. Now, weird is it's not really on the PCB itself. The PCB looks totally fine. I don't see this coating, but somehow everything in here has this sort of bronze coloring to it. And it does come off just kind of. So personally, I have never seen anything like this. I'm going to try to clean it up a little bit, at least on the rails here. I don't know. It's kind of weird. So I've had no luck in getting whatever this is off. It's a really hard coating and it doesn't want to come off. I'm wondering if this is whatever is on the outside of the case that is giving it that browning that I can't get off. And people had suggested that it was cigarette smoke or nicotine. I don't think so, because there's absolutely no smell of cigarettes. I can put my nose right up to this and smell it. It doesn't smell like anything. It just sort of smells like old dust. And that's it. I'm very familiar with the horrible smell of cigarettes. This does not have that. I ran out of space next to the 1084 monitor to hook these disk drives up next to the computer. Okay, here's the Disk 2 controller card plugged into both of these drives. I have the other floppy controller with the FloppyEmu hooked up to it in slot 7, so I can put both of these in. The 2 Plus has power, it's plugged into the RetroTink, it's ready to turn on. Here we go. It's trying to boot off these, which is interesting. There's no disk in there. Stop trying to boot horribly. What are you doing? Oh, I realize now what was happening. I had a game selected on the FloppyEmu, and it was then booting partially off this, then it was going to slot 6, because a lot of games are just hard-coded to only work off of slot 6. Well, since FloppyEmu doesn't seem to have anything good on it right now, I need to copy some more utilities on there. I'm going to put Locksmith into drive 1, and we are going to attempt to boot Locksmith V6 directly off this drive. Here we go. That looks pretty good. Let's see. Utilities, I'm going to do a fast verify on the Locksmith disk. Drive 1, slot 1. That looks great. That's what you want to see, all periods. That drive 1, appears to be working great. We're going to do a fast verify on drive 2. So I'll move this disk into this second lower drive. Remember, this is the one that had all that weird crap inside of it. Uh-oh, it's kind of stuck in the drive. No, there we go. All right, here we go. Space to continue. Sounds weird. Seems to be working, though. There we go. It works. And let's turn it on and hopefully boot a game. PR number 6. What are we going to get? Hey, it's working. Oregon Trail. Let's check out the top 10. Who was playing on this particular disc? Anyways. Yeah, look at those top 10. Stephen Meek, Travel Guide, 7,000 points. David Hastings was an adventurer. And Andrew Sublett, also an adventurer. But poor Mary Bartlett, only 937 points. It's probably where I'd be. So there we go. Both disk drives are working. It's pretty much what I figured. It's why I didn't really show them before. They just needed, they didn't need anything. I'm sure they would have actually worked perfectly without doing anything. But a little lubrication always helps disk drives, especially when they're this age. Well, here's something interesting. I tried to connect the RetroTink to the 80 column card, and I get this. A rolling picture. I see it's there. I loaded CPM. Now there's the directory, but it's rolling quite a bit. I wonder what's going on there. I think that this 80 column card obviously outputs a somewhat non-standard video signal, possibly 61 hertz or 59 hertz, or sort of close enough that CRTs are okay with it, but RetroTink, not so much. Okay, well, that's going to be it for this video. I know I covered a lot. A huge thank you to Stuart, of course, for the current tracer, for the Apple II Plus, for setting that other cool stuff in. I hope everyone enjoyed all the various things I've covered with the Apple II Plus repair series. It's been incredibly fun getting that machine up and running, a real trip down memory lane, which means a lot to me. I think that's kind of why we all do this retro nostalgia thing, right? It's partially to feel what it was like back in the day to use these computers, but for a lot of people, myself included, I just love the look and feel of it, and it reminds me of when I was a kid. I love the technology we have now, don't get me wrong. It's incredible. Cell phones and YouTube and internet and on and on and on. But there's something special about these old machines as well, and I love that they can coexist in a place like my digital basement here. And it brings me endless joy. And I'm really glad I can bring that to everyone out here on the internet and on YouTube. So thank you very much for watching. If you enjoyed this video, I'd appreciate a thumbs up, but if you didn't, you know what to do. Hit that subscribe button to subscribe to my channel, and of course the bell icon for notifications, which I think will come in on your phone only, no more emails anymore. And then of course, your comments and your suggestions are appreciated down in the comment section below. And that's gonna be it. Stay safe, stay healthy, and I'll see you next time. Goodbye.